You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series. It syndicates for the A-List Online. That means my name's Andrew Mackay-Smith. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I do hope you are well. The interview subject coming up for you is, we use this word a lot on the podcast, and I'm going to use it again, a legend. It's Bill Steer from the UK grind icons, Carcass. Now, the reason for the chat with Bill is to talk up Carcass's appearances in Australia throughout March 2020. I'll read out the dates. There's 2 download appearances. First is in Melbourne on the 20th. The second is in Sydney on the 21st. I don't know how they get that bloody show packed down so quickly and moved 1,000 kilometres north so quickly. Anyway, must be professionals. There you go. The next show will be in Hobart on the 24th. Brisbane, we've got a show on the 25th. Adelaide, you get one on the 26th. Gosh, they're all going through Adelaide these days. People must be turning up to gigs there again. And Perth at Slayfest on March the 28th. Now, I've got to say, my own opinion on Bill Steer is that if you're playing deathcore, metalcore, and you're using that new wave of British heavy metal style lead work in your guitars, you owe a debt of gratitude to this man, because he's really the guy that popularised it and brought it to the mainstream attention way back in the early 90s or late 80s. It really was as well. But anyway, here he is, Bill Steer. Hello, mate. How's things?
Oh, good. How are you?
Mate, I'm plugging away. Yeah, it's let me see. I'm looking out my window now. It's slightly overcast, and I know there's a chance of rain a bit later, and thank God there is. But until then, it's as humid as you know what in my part of the world here, mate. We'll just have to put up with it. How's the conversations been going?
Yeah, good. Yeah, just I don't know, 4 or 5 interviews, back to back, and yeah, I mean, we've been rehearsing all day, so
Cool.
Yeah, we're quite excited about this trip.
Oh, I bet you are. And look, you got to know by now, mate. And I know, I think I'm right in saying this, that you've lived in Australia before, mate. But Carcass are a big band here, very influential, very much loved, actually.
Oh, cool. That's nice to hear. Thank you.
You know, the other thing is, I don't know whether you know this, but do you know just how many bands from Sydney and Melbourne that you've influenced over the years? I feel like every time I go down there and watch a metal band, I feel like I'm watching a band that's been listening to the first 3 Carcass albums. But, I mean, jokes aside, you are one of the most continuously influential bands in the history of heavy metal, certainly in the last 35 years or so. I mean, you practically invented grindcore, but then shifted gears so wonderfully and incorporated that beautiful new wave of British heavy metal sound that your guitar playing is so synonymous with, and you became superstars really through that process. So I guess I'll round out the question by saying that I know you're a humble bloke because I've listened to your interviews before, but do you actually realise just how influential you have been over heavy metal?
To a degree, I guess we do. I don't think it's healthy to get too hung up about things like that, because for every person or band member you meet who claims you've been an influence, there's always somebody else who's not aware of your stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, metal's more diverse than it's ever been, and there are just countless subgenres. But yeah, in our little corner of the scene, I guess, yeah, we've had an impact, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, indeed it is. Yeah. Do you feel? You know, I know that there's been hiccups over the years insofar as there's been breaks when there's been releases and the like, but you must feel a great sense of satisfaction when you look back over the career and all that you've managed to accomplish.
Yeah, you start to make peace with certain things that bothered you from the past. You know, if there's enough distance, it's kind of a thing that used to bother you becomes kind of harmless. So that's one of the good things about getting older, I guess.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that, actually. Don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I remember with each one of those records, from that initial run of albums that we did, from the late 80s through to the mid-90s, with each record, that there were elements that we weren't particularly happy with. And, sometimes you'd get quite bent out of shape about that stuff, but you can't really feel that way now, You just kind of look fondly on all of them, I guess, after a period of time.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because look, a lot has been written about one of your albums, which is Heartwork from 1996. Now, I remember getting it at the time and thinking it was fantastic, and I think I picked it up at around about the same time that I got Weezer's Pinkerton. Very different genre of music, of course, but an album that was similarly very misunderstood. Critics and fans didn't really understand it when it was released, but I know for a fact it's since gone on to become very popular, and it's indeed become a musical touchstone. So, when you're writing an album like that, which really wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't that different from the rest of your stuff. It's just fans and some critics got themselves over a bother. You just added a few extra elements and made it just a little bit more listenable and a little bit more accessible. But I understand what your point you made earlier there. But do you feel vindicated with that album all these years later that it has become a bit of a fan favourite?
I guess so. I think I wouldn't want to use the word controversial because that's maybe too strong. But if you're looking at, say, Hard Work, which I think is album number 4, and that's from around 93, and then the next one, the album that became Swan Song, which we did in 95, and then I think that actually surfaced after we broke up in 96. I'd say those are the 2 albums that get the most hotly debated.
Yep.
Obviously, Hard Work is the most lauded, I suppose. I guess it sold the best out of all of those records. But around the time we did it, it was very divisive because I think maybe people felt the production was too good and we'd slow down a little bit too much for their liking. We're still playing fast stuff, but it was just, there was a variation going on, and there were some tunes that were very much in the medium tempo zone, and I think that was too much for some folk. And we were aware that would happen. It just felt good to us to play that music. And down the line, it was great when that album started to achieve some kind of following and become rated by people. That was lovely. It just took a while. It wasn't a particularly popular record at the time it was released, I know.
Yeah, it was the 90s, that period in the 90s there, that's really when I came through. So I was 18 in 1996, and that's when I left a boarding school and the world started to open up to me, and I found bands like yourselves and At the Gates. And I really feel like between the two of you, you were the European bands that kept heavy metal in the spotlight when it went into death metal and it went into black metal and therefore underground through that period. So I guess my question for you through that, did you notice a lot of that happening around you at the time? And do you think that period was a good time for the genre in general? I know it's a very broad question to be asking you, but I really do rate your playing and your impact on the genre. So do you think that the 90s, in other words, did heavy metal have to go through that period in order to emerge on the other side and become the enormous commercial success it is now, do you think?
Yeah, it's very hard to analyse something like that, and I wouldn't be best placed to do so. What I would say was that something like Hard Work was definitely not the right record for its time, judging by the kind of response it got. And then, as I said, later on it became fairly popular, and that was really nice for us. And then, the next record, the band was history by the time it came out, but I gather that was pretty much roundly despised. And so that had an even longer incubation period where, eventually some people kind of got to grips with it. I have met people who favour that one over all of our records. But in the broader sense, I don't know. Once we'd broken up, metal just seemed to become bigger than ever. So by the time we'd reformed, for want of a better term, the scene was so different. I just didn't recognise many elements of it. It was just there was just a huge business framework around the whole thing that hadn't been there before. So you could say, and all things must pass. Change is inevitable, and it was kind of like there was some really good sides to it too. It just took a while for me to get used to it because I'd been out of the loop. I've been playing, different music in different places, and I wasn't used to doing huge festivals to massive metal audiences at that stage.
Yes, yeah. What brought you to Australia? And how long did you live down here for?
Well, needless to say, it was a relationship. And I think the longest stretch I stayed there uninterrupted was probably like 7 months or something.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha. Were you in Sydney or Melbourne? Or?
Yeah, Sydney. It was Tamarama Beach. In
fantastic, yeah.
It was fantastic around there. Really, really nice. And I mean, I had been to Australia, several times before that, but staying for that length of time, you really start to get the essence of the lifestyle and the way people are. And yeah, I mean, I was very taken with it, obviously.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, do you come back very often, even for holidays, that sort of thing?
No, I mean, since then it's really been a case of when the band goes there. So
Yeah.
I mean, we all look forward to it tremendously. I mean, we like to travel, full stop, obviously, but Australia is one of the big ones for us.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. Well, you know, these shows with Download, and I know that's the main draw that you're coming down, but I've actually heard instances of people from Sydney and Melbourne not wanting to go to Download and actually coming up here to Brisbane to actually want to see you guys by yourselves. That's how powerful you are. That's the draw that you are these days. So, I guess the question for you after that is, I mean, with the set list that you could put together, how do you pick songs? Because there's a hell of a lot of classic cuts that people want to hear.
Well, it's tricky because sometimes you're given 45 minutes, sometimes it's an hour.
Hmm.
Obviously, if it's a headline thing, it could be more than that. But yeah, there's plenty of debate that goes on between the members of the band. There are certain songs that we more or less have to play, and then there's a little bit of room for changing things up. But we try and represent each of the albums we've done.
Yeah.
Some albums are gonna, some records there's gonna be more songs from that particular record for various reasons, because we prefer it or because it's a more popular record, whatever it might be. But yeah, just this week we've been practicing for the first time in ages, and we just really wanted to change the setup. For us first and foremost, but also for the audience, so it doesn't too closely resemble what we've been playing the last few years.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Hey, I remember talking to Ralph Santola, the late great Ralph Santola, a few years back, and he told me, and this is about as high praise as I think you can get for it, because I rate Ralph's guitar playing so highly. But he told me that he remembers standing side of stage watching you play, and you were the most charismatic guitarist that he'd ever seen. So, do you get a lot of feedback from your peers along that line?
No, I mean, goodness, that's a massive compliment from him. I'm really shocked to hear it, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a beautiful thing to say, man. He meant it too. Yeah.
Wow, that's fabulous. Goodness, that's really shocked me. Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing is rare. I don't hear it very often. Let's be honest. So yeah, I mean, that's super cool.
Yeah. Was that a? Did you tour with? You must have been in Death, I think, at the time. That must have been about 91 or 92, I suppose, was it, when you guys toured together?
Yeah, that would be the first time we met him. Definitely, he was quite new to Death at the time. But then we went on to do loads of more festivals with him. Because obviously he's been out there playing with your Obituaries,
Deicide, yeah.
And so on. So yeah, in recent years, that's when we tended to cross paths. And yeah, I mean he was always very complimentary to us, and we loved seeing him because he's just like an old friend from the past, and a lot of fun to hang out with, really.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. It was. I remember talking to one of his best mates in Bjorn Street, of course, from Soilwork and Night Flight Orchestra. The night before he passed, it was just a coincidence, but that we ended up having a chat together. But he was a bit more in the loop, and I've had a chat to Bill Hudson, who was his other good mate, very good mate as well, who was with him when he passed away as well. It's very sad, that whole situation there, and I was actually at the beginning of a discussion with him about bringing him out to Australia for some clinics and show and goes and this sort of thing. I'd still love to do that sort of stuff, but he was going to be my first, but unfortunately that it sort of didn't happen. But I mean, we've still got that wonderful body of work that he played on to listen to and to remember him by. But it's always such a shame when I say this, as a heavy metal fan, one of our own falls.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it's very sad.
What new bands do you enjoy? Do you enjoy any of the new music that's out there?
Yeah, I'm quite slow on this stuff, in all honesty. I mean, I'm a rabid music fan, and I buy albums all the time, but they wouldn't tend to be new releases, if you know what I mean. They're albums
Yep.
that are new to me, but they tend to be from the past. People like Dan and Jeff in the band, and Tom, our guitar player now, they're a lot better at keeping up with what's going on. I mean, I'm trying to think of, over recent years, bands I've seen that have impressed me. I mean, there's quite a few, but whether they be considered new, I don't know. I mean, they're certainly newer than we are.
It's a bit like that these days, isn't it?
But I mean, that could cover a lot of ground from, I don't know, a municipal waste to a neck rot to a power trip to a lost society. Ghoul was a fantastic live band. I mean, there's tons really. But yeah, it's more, I mean, for me, that stuff is more of a live thing. At home, I'm more inclined to listen to older music. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you actually on that one there. I get a ton of new music, and I certainly like the vast majority of it when it's through a label like Nuclear Blast or Metal Blade or what have you is outstanding. It is, but I tend to find that what was the recent one I got was Beach Boys' Pet Sounds on vinyl, and it's oh my god, I hadn't discovered that album's genius until recently, but I'm almost listening to it not non-stop, but whenever I've got some downtime and the kids are asleep or they're yet to get up in the mornings or what have you on weekends, I tend to put that one there on, and you sort of realise that some people, especially these great genre originators, they were in touch with something else quite unique.
Yeah, it's very much a time and a place. I mean, there are countless great artists and bands now and in the past, but very few are positioned just right to have that kind of impact. The impact you're talking about with the Beach Boys or a Hendrix or the Beatles or an Elvis or whoever.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. All right, mate, I think that's my time. But look, it's been it's a real thrill to finally talk to you. I've got to say, you can tell I'm an old fan, and I love listening to your guitar playing. You're really one of the first guys that I heard, making death metal sound really listenable and really melodic, but still maintaining that real plutonium heaviness that your playing has got. And thanks very much for the conversation, and live long and prosper.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
No worries, brother. All right, thanks very much again.
All right, cheers. See you soon.
Gotcha. Bye. You've been listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast series that syndicates for the A-List Online. That means my name is Andrew Mackay-Smith. That interview subject was the one and only Bill Steer from Carcass. Thanks for listening.